Conducted. Did anyone watch Select Board last night in the discussion on hybrid meetings and in-person meetings and staying remote?
There's the article about it in the paper this morning, but yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen the paper yet. Erica did a nice job explaining what the potential options are.
Seems like we have a lot better chance of getting a quorum when we have people dialing in from off island, that's for sure.
I think so too, Chris, especially in the winter, you know, especially.
Yeah, I mean, given our schedule of, a heavy January, February.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with Peter Schaefer about it's good to see each other nose to nose, especially now that Joe brings donuts to all the things that we show up in person at.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, remember town meeting last year?
Oh,
brought
yeah,
the
he did.
donuts.
Right,
Yeah.
way more
Happy
than we
to.
needed.
Happy to, if bribery works,
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. That's why if there is a hybrid model that could work,
Yeah.
it seems like that would be best.
Yeah, because then people who are away for the winter months could still participate, and those of us that are here in the winter months could still sit next to each other.
You might even get more participation in town boards, right? Because people that feel like they can't really commit because they travel quite a bit in the off season.
Yeah, that
Right.
makes sense. Okay, it's 4:00, so I will call to order the Finance Committee on Thursday, February 17th. And it's remote participation via Zoom. So here's the script. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The town reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. As a preliminary matter, this is Denise Cronow, Chair of the Finance Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. And I start with Peter Schaefer,
Aye.
Joe Grouse,
Aye.
Jill Veith, Chris Glowacki,
Aye.
Joanna Roche. Thank you. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Brian Turbot.
Present, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Rick Sears.
Here.
Maria Besheva. Here. Michelle Monroe.
Here.
And I'm so sorry. I've been on 4 meetings with you, the person who's the head of.
Oh,
All right.
Bob Petrov, nothing to be sorry about. I'm here.
Thank you, Bob. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
We're trying to clean up my name tag there on this thing here.
Yeah, because I realized you weren't OIH administrator. So, okay. All right. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Finance Committee is convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. Before we go to the first item on the agenda, a couple of housekeeping rules. So I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude, I will ask the members of the committee if they have any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. And please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And my continuing administrative comment about only person at home, if my dog needs to go out, Stephen becomes the chair when my screen goes black. Okay, all right. So with that, may I please have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
thank you. Roll call, Peter,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, did everyone have a chance to go through the meeting minutes from February 14th? I see nodding of heads. Any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And Peter,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
George, Joanna,
Aye.
Denise, I. Good, thank you. Okay, with that, Brian, we'll go right to the review and discussion of the fiscal year 2023 Our Island Home budget, please.
Excellent. So thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for the opportunity to present the Ireland home budget. With us today, we have Bob Petroff, who is the OIH administrator, and I'm trying to see is Michelle on and Michelle Monroe, who is the assistant administrator, who will both take you through the budget. And as always, they'll be able to answer any questions, and I'm available as well.
Okay, so we'll start out with goals. Denise?
Yes, please start out with the goals, Bob, and then what we've done with the other budgets is we spent more time on the exceptions, so we can ask questions about that. So
Yep.
let's
Okay.
go through the goals and objectives, and then we'll hop over to the exceptions, please. Thank you.
They're very straightforward and direct. I don't know that they need a lot of speaking to, so I'll try to avoid being myself and talking on. Administrator vacancies, pretty much self-explanatory. Capital budget projects are renovation of West Wing shower room and installation of some new windows. Funds have been secured from prior capital budgets. We're looking at the same kind of renovation of shower room that we started with the East Wing in the past. Goal 3 is Lpf Training Program. We've actually started the first step of that in terms of preliminary contract development, and down in the accomplishments, we did the same thing with our nurse aides. So it's a model that we're already up and running and working. So hopefully this will come through with our nurses as well. But it's still gonna take a little while for them to go through the curriculum, obviously. And then the last overall goal is just consistent staffing. Nurses are the lifeblood. Nurses and aides are lifeblood of the building, and we've got a hole or two here. We got to continue filling those. So that's everybody's job one in nursing homes. Excuse me. As I mentioned, initiatives accomplishments. We started the CNA certification program with CCCC. We had good initiative 2. We had great performance in the infection control surveys. Initiative 3 came out a little before we had an outbreak in December. So we were going along very well, but unfortunately, December and January hit us hard, and that's behind us now, we hope. So, you know, we've gone a good long time, so we should be in a good place with that now. And then last accomplishment was getting Michelle on board and hired and acclimated. She's a great resource, so I appreciate her. Priorities, these again are pretty general. Staffing, number one concern. There's all the discussions that are going on historically about a new facility. I'll leave that discussion for other times. And then general building upgrades. I've always looked at physical facility plan, make sure that's good, in good shape. And then again, one of the priorities is what we've identified before in terms of shower upgrade and window projects. So now we can move into exceptions. The positions are increasing in those 3 departments: maintenance, activity, and housekeeping, from part-time to full-time positions, and those are the annualized costs involved for that. Capital items, a new generator, and an $8.5 million design and project management line item in capital. I was thinking, Brian, I forget what that's a percentage of. It's a percentage of some construction estimate, but I'd have to defer to you for the specifics of that.
It's 17, the $8.5 million is 17% of the estimated $50 million construction cost.
Thank you. Operating items, the $50,000 for professional services is travel nurses with a couple holes we have with nursing staffing. That's a venue we're trying to access. We're trying, everything we can in terms of online and social media to try to get nurses here. So that's what that's for. And $10,000 medical supplies is nursing machines, bladder scanner and EKG machine. And finally, the $50,000 is an upgrade around the building for Comcast TVs and phones in all the rooms. And that's the quick summary, I hope, Denise.
That's very quick. Thank you, Bob. I realize this has nothing to do with the budget, but how are you doing in terms of COVID? I know you did have the outbreak the second half of December and January, and you're in much better shape now, I believe.
Yeah, what's it been, I think 8 or 10 days? Michelle, help me out, since we've had a positive.
Yeah, so we have all our positives recovered. We hit our first goal of no new positives for 7 days. And if we can go an additional 2 weeks, we will be out of our outbreak status as long as we have no new positives. So
Great.
hopefully by the beginning of March, we'll be out of that status.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, questions from the Finance Committee for Bob or Michelle? First Joe, and then I'll go to Peter. Go ahead, Joe.
Great, thanks, Denise. Bob, could you, in your story, there was something, one of the headings talked about a payment-driven payment model. Maybe I copied that wrong.
Yeah.
But that it was changing, and I was curious, what is that payment model, and what's the benefit to RL and Home of the change?
Yeah, it's a payment-driven payment model. It's a new thing that CMS is doing, and it's based around diagnoses, and starting with the diagnoses and then billing off of the diagnoses. It's a relatively new term. It's 2 or 3 years old, and that's most of what I know about it. I haven't had experience with PDPM myself in the buildings I've been in.
And Bob, does that affect Medicaid payments, Medicare payments, or any sort of insurance reimbursement?
Medicare payments.
Medicare payments, so
Yeah.
not Medicaid.
Right.
Okay. And then I guess my other question, in the budget for fiscal 22 that we're in today, and then the plan for fiscal 23, there's pretty dramatic salary cost increases, and I just wonder if you could speak to what's driving those.
Michelle, most of it is driven by the union contract, I would think is the quick answer, and just whatever percentages are in there, but I defer to Michelle or Brian for more specifics than that.
So the increase. Go ahead, Brian.
No, go ahead, Michelle.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
The maintenance and housekeeping are increased due to the COVID regulations and the new standards that have been put forth for protocols on those activities. Along those same lines, as we've lost volunteers due to COVID and the restrictions put in place, to have another hand to help out with activities, the one-on-ones, get those groups running, those would be those requests.
Okay. Good enough.
Joe,
I'll pass up.
No, just to follow up on that as well, to Bob and Michelle's comments. A lot of the increase in salary and ancillary employee costs is driven also by projected increases, benefits, and the projected pension increase as well. So, benefits, health insurance alone is projected to rise somewhere between 9.5% to 11.5% based on our initial projections right now. So a lot of it's being driven by that as well.
Could you or one of the folks from OIH talk about what is the percentage in the staff costs that are traveling nurses or temporary nurses as opposed to full-time staff? And I understand that those temporary nurse professionals are quite expensive compared to sort of normal normal staff nurses?
We haven't used a great deal in the last year. And that's what that 50,000 is for. So I don't know the exact number, but I don't believe there's been, Michelle and I were talking about this earlier. I would say less than a couple weeks, maybe of agency in the last year. Is that correct, Michelle?
So we were using agency starting back in 2019, and we had an average of 1 to 2 nurses in the facility. With the COVID outbreak across the state and our ability to gain travel nurses has decreased, we have not had a travel nurse in our facility since September of 2021.
Wow, I mean, that's terrific, because I understand the hospital is really struggling with temporary nurse staff costs. So good for you. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you, Joe. Peter?
Yeah, I'll add one thing to what Joe is saying is that most hospitals, from research I've been doing, are running 3 times the cost for traveling nurses as they did last year. So it's great for what you're doing there. Basically 2 questions. Number one, and this is out of my ignorance, is it the same union at the hospital as it is at our island home?
Yes, part of our staff is under the same SEIU union.
Okay, so your salaries would be competitive with the hospital.
I don't know what their wages are, but it would be the same union working with both entities.
Well, I would assume within the category. It'd be
Within,
the same. Yeah. Okay. And the last thing is just, what are you guys doing in terms of staff housing? You have plans, or how many people are in staff housing at this point? If any?
Michelle, why don't you, we've got the one 2-bedroom apartment there. Michelle, where's that again? The group?
so the apartment that we have right now is for our travelers. Our own staff right now, we do not have in-town housing, though it is a topic that we are discussing. We actually had a meeting with Tucker yesterday and Amanda in HR, because this is a bigger topic in the town and finding out what some of the needs are. We have had staff had to resign and move off island, but our current staff here all have housing outside of town housing.
You guys are in better shape than most places. Thank you.
I think we have a lot of long-term staff. It's really something. I mean, it's like more than 3/4 have been here, 18 years plus, it seems, when I go around and meet people and ask them how long they've been and stuff. So I think but as that changes, then I think the nursing home's gonna be faced with other people are dealing with as the continuum shifts.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Joe?
Can I throw another question in? Is that okay? What is the current licensed bed capacity for our island home at the moment? And could you comment on what sort of average, I don't know whether you call it occupancy or average number of beds per day have been over the last, say, 6 to 12 months?
Why don't you take that, Michelle? I mean, it's 40, we're running around 30, so maybe 26 to 32, maybe average out of 45 total.
So,
Yes,
so we're licensed to have a 45 bed capacity.
That's correct.
Okay, but we've been running 25 to 30.
Maybe a little more before COVID, but somewhere in that range, I think.
I would
Very-
say 28
very-
to
it's
31.
Very, very stable. It's not a lot of ups and downs, at least what I've seen and what I see in the past.
Got it. Thank you.
I should unmute. Chris?
Thanks. Question for Brian. The $50 million estimate on the new facility. Remind me how fresh is that number?
It's actually, Rick just very politely reminded me, my goal to be precise, it's actually 55 million, not 50. So I apologize for that. I want to say it's when, was it LWDA did the last round of reviews of the facility, Chris. So it's probably 18 months or so, maybe. But I mean, should the townspeople graciously grant us the 8.5 million, we would employ the same strategy as we went to town meeting as we have recently, where we would have the firm bid in hand by the time we got to town meeting, so that we would have so that the townspeople will be able to have at the annual town meeting a meaningful discussion on the borrowing article, and then have the actual number necessary when we go to the debt exclusion to the ballot box. So, I think that by the time we get there, that most likely may change a little bit in an upward direction, because I don't think building costs are going to plummet in the near term. But I
Yeah,
think
even with 18 months behind us, it might be
yeah.
more than a little. I was just curious
Yeah.
as to kind of where that number may fall. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Bob and Michelle? But do you get any patients coming in on a rehab basis? Or no? Do they
We
go to the
have-
hospital first?
Well, at some point, once they leave the hospital, they'll come here. We're right now, our rehab services are, we don't have rehab services at the building with our own employed rehab therapists, so we're working with the hospital. And we're trying to migrate towards some sort of stopgap or, kind of bridge to get us back to being able to get those services on site.
Thank you, Bob. Okay. Any other questions? No? In which case, thank you very much for your presentation. It was clear, and best of luck with everything that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Sure. Stephen, you're up next, and congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind, but it's been fun. I have a lot of support. Would you?
Sorry, my phone
Every
rang.
time, I thought it was me.
Oh, that was my phone, and even though it's off, it still rang on my computer. So sorry.
No worries. Hey, it warned me, and now I'm checking my phone to make sure I'm silent. Okay, if you'd like, I can just try to summarize this as quickly as possible. Basically, our goals are to maintain the functionality and aesthetics of the island, to improve, preserve, be proactive, and ensure that the island remains beautiful within the realm of within our assets. And we will try to improve those as we go along in the years. Our priorities are basically to recruit, train, and retain the staff that we have. We have a lot of dedicated people to the Public Works Department who take great pride here, and I believe some training and some training and development will go a long way. We want to emphasize stormwater infrastructure, talent, trees, and vegetation. We want to bring that back, put as much effort to it as we can. On, please. Now, our responsibilities, as you see, we have a director now. We have a park and rec manager, and we are still improving and rebuilding. Every chance I get, I am interviewing for new hires to come in. The increased morale has brought in a great number of new interests in DPW jobs, men and women alike, in all aspects, for labor and for administrative duties. So we're doing very well. Reconnecting with a number of other departments. They've taken the burden off of us during the transition. Now we're trying to take some of that back. We're going back into building up our vehicles and refocusing on our town housing. May not be on here, but office space is also something that we're looking into as we and other agencies expand on the island. And if you could, I think the other numbers speak for themselves. I can just go to the exceptions if that's okay.
Please, Stephen, that's exactly where we'll focus.
Okay. Now for fiscal year 23, I've asked actually for more than what's here, but I appreciate what I did get. So don't get me wrong, I'm very happy. We have a great number of people interested in our being a mechanic, working for Parks and Rec, and for trees. So I'm happy that those positions are available. People are waiting to apply. Town engineer, is also a very welcome, will be a very welcome addition to make sure that we vet and proof everything that we're doing, and we will be able to expand and do our own in-house work. We have a number of vehicles in our fleet that are down, old, antiquated, and are unsafe for use. And we are trying to rebuild it so that we'll have the appropriate vehicles for the job. Number 8, forestry package is an attachment to a CAT skid steer. Is basically the plug and play vehicle of engineering and construction. You can attach nearly anything to a CAT skid steer, front loader, backhoe, ditch witch, chainsaws, anything. And the forestry package will help us with brush cutting and getting the desired effect on those areas along the roadside and make us do it much faster. We're also putting money into our pathways, pedestrian, bikes, and vehicles as well. And as for in field maintenance for park and rec, we have money allocated for that operational expense as well. If you have any questions.
Chris, do you want, Peter raised his hand. Chris, do you want to start? Because Chris and I had this, and then Peter, I'll go to you next. So.
Yeah, can I just run through a couple of quick ones?
Please,
Madam
Chris.
Chair, and then, yeah, congratulations, Stephen. Welcome. We're fortunate to have you, and that's great news that you're finding great candidates. That's awesome. What this is small dollars, so I don't want to belabor it, but overtime on snow and ice removal. How are you running this year? I was surprised to see that budget was quite a bit less this year after a couple of real snow-free seasons of actuals. You know, the actual numbers were higher, and they were light winters. And so I was just curious about how that's landing for you this year.
Oh, we're doing well. Mo and I, we fortunate with support from Brian and other people on staff, we were able to get through. We had some issues with the bureaucracy of it, but we got to get to 500 tons of material stored. And we used quite a bit in the last few storms, and we've already replaced 350 tons, and we have another 150 in case anything else comes up. So we're doing fine material wise. Some of our vehicles have experienced some damage. Some of them were already damaged on their last leg, but with having a central fleet manager working in concert with the operations manager and with advisement from finance, we are putting in everything that we can to get replacement parts and recover after each event. There was a time that we were very, let me put it this way, we put our vehicles through the works in past years, and right now we have a renewed effort to maintain and revitalize our vehicles after each event, and the guys are doing great.
Madam Chair, can I just make one comment to Chris's question about the snow and ice? Chris, one thing I think we have probably explained this just once a year, and it's kind of something that not everybody remembers, but snow and ice is the only account that we're lawfully allowed to overexpend and don't have to, and can raise on the recap. Okay. So we consistently budget, I think it's 82,000 or right, that number, even though knowing that we will most likely spend more than that. And the reason that we do that is if we increase the number and we don't hit it and we reduce it the following year, we have no lawful authority to overspend the account, to spend in excess and raise it on the recap. So it's the account that every community does this. It's not just Nantucket. So that's why that looks so out of whack.
How on earth do you keep all this stuff in your head?
Very carefully.
I'm sorry, Chris. I went all the way off into left field, and I'm glad.
No, that's okay. But you took me to my next question. You allowed me to pivot nicely, which is fleet management. When you said centralized fleet management, is that centralized within the DPW, or do we have centralized town fleet management at this point? Because one of the things that always comes up, it seems like, and I was going to ask Brian this question. As we go department by department, we're always getting capital requests for vehicles that don't look like vehicles anymore. The wheels have fallen off, and it feels like we underinvest in our fleet. Not just maintenance, because I know that comes up, and we got to build sheds, and we got to get them out of the weather and stuff. But even just, it's like the old Nantucket way, like my father's old landscaping trucks, right? They get pound it out to the last possible second? And should we be keeping our fleet? Should we be investing more in fleet overall?
So just as an point to that, it really kind of started with the former director when we hired the central fleet manager, and the goal really is, and we're working towards it. It's a work in progress still. He's had an awful lot of work just assembling the documentation for the DPW fleet and assessing that fleet and trying to get that, get some of those vehicles that we need to be replaced. But the goal in the short and long term, Chris, is really to centralize all town vehicles under the fleet management within the DPW, and then replace those vehicles on a cycle, so that rather than, the finance department saying, hey, I need to replace my assessor's vehicles, the fleet manager will send out every year, okay, here's the departments that can expect vehicle replacements. Here's the options that you have, and work with us so that then we'll put them into the capital plan in that way. So it's really one location doing and managing the entire fleet versus all the departments doing it in a relatively haphazard way. So that it's really it's been a goal for a couple of years, but I think we're getting closer with the hard work of the fleet manager that we have.
That's great. That seems like a real area for process improvement. So glad to hear it. Next question is Millie's bridge design. Millie's bridge is the actual bridge in front of Millie's that connects you over to Smith's Point. Is that correct? Is that the one? Is that what we call Millie's bridge?
Yes.
Yeah,
And,
I believe so. Yes.
And I'm sure a lot of other people have asked this question, so I'm sure the answer is yes, in terms of coastal resiliency and how that'll be designed, and how long that can be around for. My question really goes to, is the money that'll be invested in that bridge, because I'm sure it'll be invested in a way that is thoughtful about coastal resiliency, some of the money that we also see from the consultants and the total investment needed for coastal resiliency. I'm asking the question about Millie's bridge now, but what I'm really thinking about is over the next 10 years, are a lot of the projects that we would have to do anyway, just in terms of infrastructure repair, going to be done in such a way, and Joanna, you may know the answer to this better because from that work, done in such a way that it sort of comes out of that investment needed in the coastal resiliency discussion, because we're going to be doing it anyway, and we're going to do it in a way that is respectful of that issue. I don't know if anybody has an answer to that.
I've received a number of inquiries on that, and people who want the conversation to continue within the context of coastal resiliency. So I'll be revisiting that. I haven't taken any action as of yet, except to make sure that all the players know that we do want to re-engage and get the conversation going again and start back up again. But I've had that on pause until we figured out who we would have as a director. But people like a number of people have kept that alive, so we'll be revisiting that shortly.
I appreciate that. And then just one last question for me. I think this one's back to Brian. Presentation after presentation, all the vacancies, right? But I think we budget full year as if all those positions are filled. If I'm reading the budgets correctly.
You are reading them correctly.
And I'm thinking about police. I'm thinking about DPW.
Sure. Yep, absolutely.
Where do the savings show up from that at the end of the fiscal year?
They show up in the unexpended budget line item, which then is calculated into free cash. So in essence, the almost $20 million that we had, there's a certain portion. I think that there was about $3 million of unspent and turned back money across the various departments, including the school. They certainly do. Martin does a good job managing all of that. That ends up in the free cash number.
Okay.
I mean, I think that the expectation when we go through the budget process, Chris, or the hope is that those open positions will ultimately be filled so that we would have them for the full year, which is why we try to plan that way to do that.
I'm not saying the budget process is flawed. I'm just was curious because it's a lot, right? When you look down these lists, a lot of
it is. But some of those that are listed as vacant, I could be also, and I have to go back and look, might be some of the new positions that we're proposing for next year as well. So, as well.
All right, thanks. Those are all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Joanna,
Madam,
Joanna,
Yeah,
did you want to speak to Chris's coastal resiliency issue before I go to Peter's question?
I do, only from the perspective that this is exactly the kind of concern I think that we've been expressing all along. I mean, Brian knows this very well in terms of how is all of this going to be tracked? Because to Chris's point, this is a project that is on the coastal resiliency plan. It's been on our capital list. And how are the two things getting married and resolved? Right? Like how does that work? And then what does it count against? We've been talking about the Millie's Bridge for years, but it's unlikely from my naive experience in this, that there's not some level of accommodation that needs to be made to the bridge to have it fall under, whatever code it needs to be with to be part of the coastal resiliency solution, right? So whatever bid we got first wouldn't necessarily be the bid that we would need. So I guess I don't know where this project falls on that continuum.
Well, the really great thing is that Rick Sears, our assistant finance director, has spent the last 7 months working with Capcom. And he can probably shed some more light and hopefully answer some of the questions that have been raised.
So the $500,000 that's for Millie's is a direct reflection of the recommendation of the CRP, which is to place sand bermish, kind of sand berm with grasses around the base of the bridge to stabilize it. But that is just step 1 of 2. The final determination for what to do with the bridge will come in due course. But this 500,000 is directly related to the recommendation of the CRP to stabilize the footings of the bridge.
May I ask a follow-up question to Rick?
Yes, please go ahead, Chris.
Would that 500 have been in the total amount, whatever the $10 billion number, would the 500 have been in there? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Is the 500 in the 100 million total capital? Is that within the coastal resiliency plan?
Yes.
I don't think the coastal resiliency plan has a specific number for Millie's Bridge. We discussed it with the town manager and with Vince, coastal resilience, and put that in as an amount that we thought would help, would fund that.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to keep a tally of the exact numbers. I'm more interested in the concept of how much we might do for our general planning over the next decade that's in the number. But thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Peter?
Hi, Stephen. Just two questions. One is, how many full-time equivalent openings do you have right now?
Oh, wow. As of right now, we have, I want to say 3, but we have more than that coming. We have some job descriptions that we're looking at. And I've been doing so many interviews, I'm losing track. But I know we have at least 3 open right now.
Okay, but you're confident that you're going to have these jobs filled? How soon?
Oh, I like for an administrative position for now, we have almost is close to double digit, and
Double digit
also,
applicants?
Yes. From the maintenance shop right now, we actually it's not a fleet manager anymore. We also have a licensed mechanic. And we have 2 other people who are vying for the position that's open there. And other people are calling in saying they're interested and want to know how to apply. We also have another M3 or M4 position open as well. And then we have some other promotions that could be happening, or some other positions that we need to hire for, excuse me. So there's a possibility of promotion. So right now we're kind of moving things around. I'll be doing hiring all the way up until June, I predict.
Yeah, I'm just really concerned on how many holes you have. So it's
As of-
three full-timers?
As of February 9th, we had 7 open positions at
7
DPW,
open
or
positions.
yeah, or
Okay.
solid, or one of those positions as an aside is a take it or leave it attendant who gave their resignation, which is part of SWEF. But there's 7 open positions across the enterprise for DPW and SWEF.
Okay, so then Stephen, my second part is,
Mhm.
I noticed last year last summer, we only mowed Milestone Road, for example, halfway and stopped and never came back. And same thing's happening with the tree removal from all the dead trees along Milestone Road. They did it up to maybe to Nobadir and then stopped. And they haven't come back. Is this a virtue of not having people? Is this the plan? I mean, why is this happening?
I have to check in with that. A lot of the work on Milestone is done by a state contractor. And Rob, excuse me, the previous director and my ops manager was basically on that. I wasn't doing stormwater at the time. I really don't know. I'd have to research that and bring it back to you. I don't know how far down we actually went. I thought we did the entire length of Milestone. So I'll have to.
Well, you know, I can see us doing none or doing all, but it looks kind of funny when you do half. So, thank you.
They don't want to go as far as your house, Peter. That's the message.
Yeah, I'm not on Milestone Road, but I have to go past Milestone Road.
George, in 1 second. Maria, can you add Stephen Morey's last name to Stephen? Because he's on as Stephen, please. Okay. All right,
It's the
George.
correct spelling of Stephen, so that's great.
I just want to say that I did see down tree removal today on the Sconset Road down as far as the airport road in I don't know, the thing that the road that goes all the way down to where the plants are and the electric company down there. So there were 6 or 7 guys and a couple of trucks. So that part was being addressed today.
Timely.
There we go.
Good deal. Yeah, our tree crew has been working daily now. In the past, that was something we did every so often, but you're going to see them a lot more often now.
Thank you.
Stephen, a couple quick questions from me. I noticed that effectively a third of your budget is actually looking after just town buildings. Does that sound about right to you?
Yes, we have a lot of the buildings and acquisitions we have need work. And even though it's one of those things where you don't see what goes on the inside, but windows, interior, plumbing, tile, drywall, is just so much that goes into it and the costs are extensive. So that's about right.
And mosquito control. I thought we stopped doing mosquito control. We're still doing.
I didn't get the memo on that, so I'll have to.
No, we,
get the hit on that one.
I thought I saw a line item for mosquito control in the story, but I made these notes for our January meeting, so maybe I missed it.
Madam Chair, no, it is correct. It is in there. It was an override, so it increases annually by 2.5%. We did not stop doing mosquito control.
Oh,
What we did was we withdrew from the Mass Coalition because it was too cumbersome for us to be able to follow. It was too difficult for us to be able to participate and have the company that they procured actually perform the services out here. So for a period of time, they had been letting us procure it on our own and then said we had to stop. So I think it was at last year or the prior year's annual town meeting, we filed the legislation to withdraw from the
Okay.
coalition to manage it on our own.
Okay, thank you.
We have not stopped because I don't think residents in Mattakit would like it if we stopped.
No, we're still going.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any other questions for Stephen? Chris?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot a quick one, which is, I think if I'm remembering correctly, the capital program committee gave a negative response on your request for a mechanic truck. Do I have that right?
Did we get a negative?
Rick can answer that.
Yeah, that is correct, Chris. The committee thought that the price of $120,000 was just a lot for something that wouldn't be used very much, as well as not having somewhere indoors to store an expensive vehicle. Just they thought it would be better to just pay the towing or lose a little bit of the productivity.
Okay, that's fine. And that committee does very, very thorough work. So I'm sure the recommendations are sound, but sometimes it's nice to hear from the department head about kind of what the pain that will cause us. But I appreciate hearing the back.
Yeah, it will cause us some pain, but at the same time, we do have alternative methods like calling for a third party to do it. Because of certain things with the union, our fleet manager was unable to do certain tasks. So this vehicle would have been helpful in some ways, but I mean, we'll just adjust and work with what we have for the time being.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chris. Stephen, I think you're all set. So thank you very much. Thanks for the great presentation. And again, congratulations.
Thanks, everybody. And I won't forget you, Peter. I'll get your answer.
Good. Okay. Stephen Morey, I'm going to turn over the solid waste leadership to you as my dog needs to go outside. And the two people who had that as their that looking after it was Joanna and George. I'll be back in as soon as I can. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
George, did you want to start with the goals and priorities, and I'll take them through the financials, or did you want to? George and I, admittedly, to the members of the committee, didn't actually get a chance to talk about how we were going to present this together, so I apologize for that.
I'm sure you'll do a fine job without the preparation.
Okay. Well, since I didn't hear George, I guess I'll start.
No, I only
Not
have
you.
to say.
No, George. I'm sorry, George Aronson.
Okay,
Oh,
is-
hello.
sorry.
Yep, George Aronson, consultant of the town of Nantucket. And I'm supposed to say my name fully on the video, so I'm doing that for that purpose, for the record.
Thank you, George. Okay.
So department goals for the department, continue to improve the waste management, focusing on sustainable and functional, safe operations. Obviously, one way that we did that was with the reopening of the Take It or Leave It. George Aronson has been instrumental in helping continue the planning for what the solid waste services will look like on the other side of the contract when it ends in 2025. And there certainly is some, as the town navigates the focus on environmental monitoring, including PFAS, that certainly is a goal to continue that, and where we can expand it at the facility to consider that or move in that direction if need be. Priorities for 2023, solid waste, certainly the priority is to support the select board strategic plan goal, which of environmental leadership. We're working extremely hard to manage and position the financial and capital aspects of the fund. As you probably saw in the exceptions, there's an extremely large amount of capital this year. Work with the residents, local, state, and federal agency, as well as the local organizations, in an effort to provide transparent input into critical issues facing waste disposal and contaminants. This is one of the great reasons that we have George. He's an incredible resource of knowledge on all of this stuff. We have been working really hard. I know this is priority 4 in some respects. I think it might need to be priority 1, but we've been working very hard on internally, what does 2025 look like? What does the operation of the solid waste facility look like? Because I think it's an important question that needs to be answered as we move forward and get ready to distribute an RFP in some fashion for the operation of however we devise what the operation is going to look like. And manage and work with the Department of Environmental Protection sampling plan, including PFAS. We do have, George, we have CDM Smith do sampling now already, correct?
Yes, yes.
I'll move right to the exceptions. So the first exception is an additional position. We have a solid waste coordinator, which I know everybody has seen either at select board meetings or Graham has done presentations here, and Graham does a phenomenal job. Internally, we talked about the fact that solid waste really is a full-time job for somebody to be managing and overseeing and working with the consultants and overseeing that entire operation. Currently, it resides mainly with the DPW director. And so the town manager and I really felt that this was the time and it was appropriate at this point to recommend a solid waste manager position to oversee that operation. We had created 2.5 positions for Take It or Leave It. And Stephen and Graham put together a really great plan. And it really needs 3 full-time positions to staff it correctly and operate it on the scale that they would like it to. So we're recommending taking that half-time position and converting it into a full-time position effective July 1st. I'm going to skip over the capital if that's okay with the committee, and I'll come back to it in a second, but there's an awful lot of it. So I want to just kind of highlight the operational budget itself. The biggest driver of increases in this budget, and this is where George can speak to this a little bit better than I can, is really in the collection and disposal costs. We've seen increased utilization, which has driven up the cost of transporting items off the island and disposing of it, and certainly the cost associated with that from waste options. And we have a small uptick in recycling and materials recovery facility professional services. That's been underfunded in prior years, and that's really just kind of a catch up for the allocations that we need to make to that side of the house. I'll let George talk a little bit more about the roughly $2.1 million increase in the disposal and freight costs, because again, he deals with that every day.
No, thank you, Brian. I think one of the issues that we have under the existing waste services agreement with waste options, and again, this was amended a few years ago, amendment number 5, is that construction and demolition debris right now is accepted at the transfer station, sent off island. There is a tip fee charge, but there's also an issue of rising costs on the mainland, both to accept and process the material and to get it there. And it's been a lot faster than inflation. Part of what we're seeing is a shortage of capacity in all of Massachusetts. Some of that material gets loaded on trains and goes to Ohio and may start going to Alabama, just to give you a sense of what's going on in the solid waste world. And Nantucket, where it is, basically is captive to those costs unless it reduces waste or finds something else to do with it on island. So one of the focuses of our longer term planning is exactly to find out to what extent we can push that, reduce what goes off island and gets caught up in that Southeast Massachusetts shortfall problem where it gets shipped out all over the Eastern Seaboard. And anything we can do to either reduce amounts or find something else to do on the island, or for that matter, find a way to pass the cost on to the generators of that waste is going to help. So those are the goals, but we're not going to be able to do that on an existing contract. And some of that is just going to be part of the 2025 planning. How can we shift costs that are hitting this budget hard, basically to the those who construct and make construction waste, and right now are not bearing the full burden of that under the way the contracts are structured. So, I think a second issue related to that, and this is really gets into the other major source of operational expenses, is in the last 8 years, the landfill seems to be the only place that can handle mixed construction excavation waste on the island. And again, we're seeing huge increases in the amount of that. The town ends up paying for it, and it ought to be the construction sites that are paying for what it should be a construction cost and not a town cost. So again, we're looking to fix that by 2025, but we've got to get through 3 years to do that. And we're just reflecting the costs that come out of the contract. I think those are the major sources of increases. We also saw 5% inflation this year. And so anything that's a fee that's tied to CPI took a jump this year. And there are a number of those fees that are included in waste services agreement. I think those are the major sources. I don't know if there are things that we need to cover.
I'll go through the capital, George, then the committee will be able to ask any questions that they have based on our observations and what they see in the budget. So capital is, I know that Steve and the DPW director kind of touched on it. There's an awful lot of capital that we put forward in the budget this year. Solid waste was certainly something that needed some more attention. And I think that some of it was just a disconnect between the town and the operator and timely submission of capital requests, because in the contract, we're obligated to make repairs to the facilities that we own and the facility and structures itself. So the first thing that we are recommending is the smart compactor waste receptacles. I think there's one over by the hospital. Those are the solar solar receptacles, trash receptacles. They do need to be replaced. I forget how old they are, but I know that it's older than 5 years and are reaching the end of their useful life. So we are recommending that. The materials recovery facility improvements roof replacement. This is supplemental to the roughly $468,000 that we have. We had put this out once to bid, and the bid was, I think, $583,000. It is, we're not, hopefully 800,000 is far in excess of what we need, but given the fact that it's about a year or 9 months after that bid, we were trying to plan reasonably, and that was done in consultation with some discussion with Waste Options for a rough estimate of what we might need as a supplemental funding. Given the proposal for additional staff there, we have recommended that we purchase one vehicle for them. And this will ultimately, again, like I mentioned in the DPW presentation, will ultimately fall solely under the fleet management. But for right now, it was put here. We do need to make some renovations and upgrades to the restrooms and break room in the MRF facility. We would like to install a new concrete pad and catwalk along the way where all of the trash is disposed of, make it flow a little easier, make it easier for everybody to maneuver through there. Improvements, install 131 Pleasant Street trailer at Take It or Leave It. The thought is that if the town doesn't request an extension from the HDC, or we weren't successful in getting one at the end of the time that we're allowed to utilize the trailer at Pleasant Street, it would potentially be repurposed by moving it to the 130 to the Matticat Road site, and would be configured and utilized to give the Take It or Leave It some additional space so that they would have more indoor space than they have now. We need to make some improvements to the current building. It certainly hasn't had much attention in most of the time that I've been here. Hard to manage waste. George, you're gonna have to refresh my memory on what hard to manage waste is. I apologize, but we do need a building. Is that the
mattresses is the big one, because right now mattresses are stored outside. They get wet, they're heavier to move and more to dispose of when we send them to General Mattress and Framingham. So having that kept in the dry space is the bigger issue. There are other things that ought to be done under cover just to avoid later potential environmental risk to the site, but the mattresses are the big one.
The sprinkler system in the MRF facility does need to be replaced. So we would like to undertake that improvement as well. Landfill repair, the fence has some issues at various points along the perimeter. And it would be wise for us to consider replacing those sections that need to be replaced and repairing it where it can be, not only on the perimeter, but around Take It or Leave It as well. The front gate has been asked for, and we've recommended replacing that. And the gate that everybody enters through, that's an automatic gate for $60,000. Stormwater improvements. George, you'll have to talk about this one because I wasn't really completely up on this one, unfortunately.
Okay, well, right now the compost and yard waste is moved around on a pad that is porous, and there are a couple of risks from doing that. First of all, the stormwater isn't managed from the site, so we have the potential of an environmental problem of the stormwater running off and towards Long Pond. So this is one effort there. But there are also some cost savings associated with this. If you can put it on a pad and you have a hard surface, you're not going to rut, you're going to have less time to move the equipment, move material around. You're going to dig up less dirt and contaminate other materials, and in some cases are moved off-site. You're paying to get rid of them. So there are a number of benefits to doing this. Some of them are environmental, and some of them are, in fact, operational. I mean, bottom line is, and I think, Byron, you remember that there's a whole site stormwater management plan, and that's part of consideration. And this also is related to the closure of the landfill. If you can manage the stormwater better, you're going to reduce your costs there, and you're also reducing the risks, which we're still assessing, that if there is PFAS in some of the material that's right now sitting on the ground, if you put it on a pad and then recover the stormwater, you can treat it and avoid potential issues there. So it's a number of reasons why we'd like to do this. And that's why it's been proposed.
And the last two are upgrades to the sorting station in the facility itself, in a debagger. And George, if you want to take the debagger, because I think this is something that you and Nathan and Graham have talked about as well.
Yeah, there are a few things going on here. I think one of the points is that right now the town does not recycle paper. Okay, the paper right now is being bunched in with the compost. Some of that paper includes PFAS. We'd like to separate that out. We'd like to return to recycling paper, and that would reduce costs in the long term if we can do that. I think the other part about the bag opener is if you end up with, and this goes back to how waste is collected. If waste is collected in bags of materials, glass, the containers, and then waste, if the bags are improperly sorted, they end up in the wrong place, and many of them are right now being shipped to the mainland, and at frankly much higher cost because we can't put them in the landfill under the existing regulations of the DP and existing permit. Again, the principle, if there's a way to either recycle it or handle it on the island, you're going to save money, and we're looking to do that by upgrading the MRF, both the sorting station and the debagger to open the bag so that the material can be sorted. I think if you stand in the MRF right now and you look at the pile of bags that's coming off the truck, and the other part I forgot to mention is this originally came about at the start of 2020 as a COVID thing when nobody wanted to open bags before they went into the sorting process. If you had an automated debagger, you can do that, add equipment, recycle a lot more, and have a lot less contamination that ends up going to the mainland for disposal. I will say that some of this material, we're still putting the plan together as to what that equipment will look like. And given that this is a once-a-year chance to go in for authorization, we may have more detail on what this cost looks like as we proceed with the plan, but I thought it was wise to ask for the authorizations now so it's not delayed if we end up with a equipment requirement, in the spring when we're going to be further down this path.
Thank you.
That concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Okay. And Denise, I see that you're back. So if you want to quarterback and decide who gets to ask the first question, the honor is yours.
Joanna had her hand up first, so thank you, Stephen.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I have a couple of questions and just some general comments. I think that, in the context of all of the things that we've been thinking about in terms of forward thinking, right? I guess the first question I really have is, where do you see this? How do you see this facility functioning inside of the next 10 years? And are we investing in the things that make sense for us to have a stable and working to the best of our ability facility? I mean, we talked about increased utilization. Yes, there's more people on the island, right? That's the reality. So there's more garbage, right? Recovering the construction waste cost, I think, is critical. In terms of protection to the environment with regards to stormwater going into Long Pond, also critical. But I think that what I just did a quick tally, and these capital improvements are $3.1 million, right? That's a significant investment in this. And it also kind of says, I mean, this is not, solid waste is not exactly a sexy topic, right? So I get that they maybe have gone to the bottom of the list over many years here. But I do think that, especially hearing this piece about the paper recycling, I don't think, the citizens of Nantucket really understand that paper is not being recycled, or that there's even PFAS in paper potentially. So I think we have some communication issues here that really, I think some transparent communication with residents is really important. But is this investment, this $3.1 million investment, is it enough? And is it in the right things to take us to a facility that's going to be resilient and stand the test of time?
Okay, okay. First of all, it's a terrific question, and it's something that we wrestle with every day, both the issue of what should the facility be and look like it do functionally, and how do you make sure that people understand what's going on? And frankly, how can you ask islanders to manage their waste in a way that makes it a more efficient process and helps us? So, and I'm not going to have all the answers, except that we are going through a very specific structured process focused on 2025 to do that. And let me see if I can try to convey some of the elements of that process in a way that addresses your question. First of all, I think the waste services agreement, and you may be aware of this, gives the town an option to purchase the composter in 2025. Realistically speaking, given the time it takes for transitions and other things, that purchase is going to have to be set up probably in 2023 and maybe in 2024. So we have a year in advance to manage whatever transition happens, be it from private to town ownership or from private to basically another option. So a lot of it is focused around the compost itself, which is, okay, is the composter worth keeping? Number one. Number two, what else happens when the waste services agreement ends and is replaced by a new set of arrangements? And we're talking about recyclables, because the MRF is operated under the waste services agreement. We're talking about C&D, because the transfer station is leased to waste options under a fairly complicated set of financial arrangements under the waste service agreement. We're talking about the management of the landfill, because waste options manages that. And again, we have phases 1A, B, and C, which are inactive and closed and awaiting closure, subject to PFAS assessment again, and phases 2B and C, which are open, but only for a limited amount of time and very specific reasons. So there are a lot of facilities here, a lot of questions. And to answer them, we really have to go back to the basic. What's generated on the island, and we know what that is, we've measured it. How is it collected? And we know what that is and where it goes. And then what facilities handle what materials and how might that change? Okay, so we're going through the planning process. Again, obviously I could talk for a long time about this. We don't want to invest too soon in equipment upgrades until we know what the best configuration are. And we also want to do some pilot tests. So right now, there are pilot tests in process while we make decisions. We have not made decisions on specific equipment upgrades at this point, specifically in the MRF. We know there's a sorting station. We know that it needs to be upgraded. If you open the bags, you can recycle more. And you could also reduce the amount of labor required at that facility, which has always been a challenge in terms of keeping people and getting the work done. So there's actually been a bag breaker tested at the facility. We think we want one. We know that if we want one in the spring, we got it for fall, frankly, we got to ask for it now. So I think part of this is the timing of putting things in front of the committee before we in fact know exactly what they are. And that's always a challenge.
I think, oh, go ahead, George, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I think one of the things that we've seen, frankly, is over the last 25 years, the town owns the MRF and is underinvested in. I mean, it needs a new roof. The roof's 25 years old. You go in there and look at the stars. It's, and we're trying to do that. We know we've underinvested in equipment and technology. We also know that as a facility that handles 2,000 to 3,000 tons per year, mostly over the summer, that you're not going to be able to afford the fancy recycling equipment that mainland facilities that take 100,000 tons a year are going to be able to afford and spread out on a per ton basis. So how do you figure out what makes sense here and then send the rest of the things to the mainland at the lowest possible price? So I'm trying to set up the question. I don't know that I have answers for you. I'm not going to pretend I have answers that I don't have. What I can do is give you some sense of the types of questions we're asking, try to give you some comfort that we're going down the road. And then when we have specific proposals, we can lay them out and you know, and to you and everyone else on the island, frankly, and make sure that you're comfortable that we're going down that road. So I think the purchase for the composter is not on the list for this year. We're looking at that pretty hard in terms of both the condition of what we'd be buying and you know, if it's not going to be able to make compost, can you still use it for something else? And in fact, maybe you want to buy a building that's valued at $6 million, and you can buy it for $1 million because you can put something else in. So there are a lot of factors there going on. And the other pilot I'll mention is there is new technology. We may be able to put on island to treat plastics and some of the paper so we don't have to send it off island. And if we can do that, and we have some pilot tests, we're sending loads of material from Nantucket right now to a facility in Massachusetts and another one in Florida to see if they can process it. If it comes out and we can make, say, diesel fuel from that project and then host one, that could be a real win that could, you know, help us. But again, we're shooting at 2025 of a lot of these things. We got to get there. We got to, some of these investments are backlogs of things that maybe should have been proposed years ago. Some of them are proposing for specific equipment configurations that we have not defined at the level of detail we'd like to present it to you, but we know they're coming and we know we'll, you know, but we have to do it now because this is how process works.
I mean, I think one of the things to answer to follow up, Joanna, to your question is, a lot of this is being done because we're obligated to do it under the current contract anyway, and we need to maintain the facility because we still have a contract for another 3 years, almost 3 years, and we need to have a facility that is operational to the and efficient to the extent possible, given the infrastructure needs that we have. And a lot of this, even though the contract is ending, you know, I don't know that the MRF facility after 2025 is going away. So and the roof is going to last for another X number of years. So a lot of this is done with the fact that we know we have to fix these infrastructure that we own now to continue to operate the facility with an eye towards what is it going to look like. We know that in some way, shape or form, the majority of this infrastructure is still going to exist on the other side of 2025 in the contract. So we have to make this investment, and you're right. There's, you know, this is $3 million is a lot. Believe me, when Rick and I looked at it at first, I looked at it and I said, "Is Excel wrong? Because this just looks like too much." But then we started going through it, and we went through it and talked to George and Graham, and a lot of it made sense, and a lot of it is because, you know, there's always been a little bit of a disconnect between, you know, the timing of infrastructure requests getting to the DPW from Waste Options. And I think we have a better communication channel now than we have. And I think that these requests are born out of that change in dynamic and communication with Waste Options as well. So.
Thank you. What is the cost of the buyout of the composter?
Okay, interesting question. If you
And
look at Amendment 1.
George, no offense, but
I'll keep it short.
shorter would be better.
Okay. $1 million for the part that's defined, and extra words that mean that number may go up. So
How's that? How does that work?
now, how does it work? Well, $1 million for the facility. The definition of what the facility includes is going to require some negotiation.
Okay, interesting answer. That's all I have, but thank you for the answers.
Good. George? Any questions from your side? George Harrington, sorry. Good. Other questions for George or Brian? When 2020, I mean, obviously you're starting now, George, and are there multiple options for 20? And I don't need to know what they are, but are there multiple options to consider when it comes time for this contract to be either renewed or replaced? I mean, will there?
Yes.
We have a variety of choices.
Yes.
Okay.
Not as many as we'd like, but more than one.
Okay, thank you. No, that was a very comprehensive description to Joanna's question, and I really appreciate it because it gave us, gave me a much better understanding of what actually happens there besides, the basics as you drive in and drop off stuff and leave. So other questions for George O'Brien on this? No? Okay, George Aronson, thank you very much.
Thank you, George. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It was really helpful. Good. Okay, 3 more budgets done. Brian, how much do we have to subsidize solid waste as a town?
Well, in this year's budget, we need about another 1.3 million that I have to find somehow.
Okay.
And at the solid waste planning workshop, we told the select board that we did not bring it forward this year, but we were going to start prepping them today, that being last week, with the fact that we will be presenting an override to fund that, because I cannot fund another 1.3 on a go forward basis through Proposition 2.5. It just is not possible. We will find a way to get it done this year, but we will need an override in the future. We can't do it with the other needs of the town.
So starting in fiscal year 2024.
We will, for the fiscal 24 budget, there will be a proposal for an operating override on top, in addition to the ones that have already been approved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, item number 9. So Brian, I'm assuming that you, as
Maria
Libby at Concom, I think you're up.
I'm up. Okay, so the first article is Article 24, which is an appropriation for waterways improvement. We're asking for, as you can see the motion there, we're asking for a motion to approve $367,000 appropriation for waterways to, for the items or options listed below: maintenance and dredging, cleaning and improvement of the harbors, inland waters and great ponds, public access, the breakwaters, retaining walls, piers and moorings thereof, and law enforcement and fire prevention. Now, historically, very briefly, Madam Chair, we typically have used this for repairs and maintenance on the town pier more than any of the other focuses, but we're asking for the appropriation to be $367,000 for the year. And
what about the recent storm where the town pier was damaged?
Well, it's an interesting question. We have insurance on the town pier, but the damage is likely significantly less than the, depending on the storm, $100,000 or $250,000 deductible. So we will most likely be funding the repairs ourselves.
Okay. And that's in addition, that's separate from this request.
That is correct. This would be for beginning July 1st of next year.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions for Brian? Okay, may I have a motion? Any discussion about a motion? May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, roll call. Stephen?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Joanna? She's gone. Denise? Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
25.
Article 25, which is the ambulance reserve fund. We're asking, now this allocation is only for personnel and other expenses related to professional services. It is not the capital item, which will be in Article 10. So we're asking for an appropriation from the account or an authorization to spend $742,992 from that fund for the purchase of ambulance-related equipment and supplies, and the funding of 7 full-time firefighters, EMTs, and/or paramedics from that account as well.
Questions for Brian? Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion?
So moved.
To adopt.
And a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call. Stephen?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Joanna?
Aye.
Jill? Chris?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Denise? Aye. Thank you. Okay, 26.
Article 26 is the ferry embarkation fee. As I think everybody's aware, we do use this to fund the CSOs in the downtown core district. So we're asking for the an appropriation, the ability to spend $275,000 this year on that program.
Questions for Brian? Seeing none, may I have a motion, please?
Motion to adopt.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Stephen,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Denise, I thank you. Do we have to become the county?
No,
review?
this is
Okay,
this is the town assessment to the county, so you can
okay,
do this as the finance committee, Madam Chair.
thank you.
So as you'll recall in the county presentation, we have set the assessment at $174,707. So we're asking for a positive motion to allow that to be raised and appropriated from the fiscal 23 tax levy and other general revenues of the town.
Questions? Seeing none, may I have a motion
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 to
to
adopt.
adopt.
and a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Stephen,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Denise, I thank you.
Thank you. Article 28. Thankfully, every year that I've been here, we've had a motion to take no action. This article would only be necessary if there was a denial of the budget by the Nantucket County Review Committee. Since I don't believe that happened, this article is not necessary for the budget to go to town meeting floor. So a motion to take no action, which is what we've done in the past.
Thank you. Questions? May I have a motion?
Motion
So
to take
moved.
no action.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, Jill, we'll start with you.
Aye.
Thank you. Joanna,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Denise, I. There we go. OPEB,
Okay. Article 30. So historically, we've appropriated 500,000 from raise and appropriate. As the committee will probably recall, in fiscal 21, we did not make a $500,000 appropriation into the OPEB trust fund because of COVID. We eliminated most, if not all, ancillary or non-operational expenditures to the extent possible. Given the fact that we had the $19.2 million of free cash, we presented a recommendation to the select board, and the town manager has agreed as well that we would like to. We're asking for a motion to approve raise and appropriate of $500,000 from the fiscal 23 tax levy and other general revenues for the annual contribution that we would make as a normal course of business for fiscal 23. And in conjunction with that, we're asking for the motion to include a $500,000 transfer from certified free cash so that we can make that catch-up payment from the fiscal 21 payment that we didn't make, so that we get back on track of a $500,000 contribution every year. We've talked to not only our bond advisors, we've talked to our accountants and our OPEB actuary, and they all think that this is a good idea and will help and is worthwhile given the free cash level that we have. So we would ask for a favorable motion to raise and appropriate 500,000 and transfer 500,000 from the free cash in the treasury.
any questions? Chris?
Yeah, Brian, any thought of you putting more free cash in it this year?
We had thought about that, Chris, but the recommendation of an unallocated free cash is about 5 million, and admittedly, given some of the increased utilization at the transfer station, we may need to use some free cash to balance that budget for fiscal 22 as a transfer into there. So I think right now we're comfortable with making this at this level.
Yeah, sure. I was just curious if you had discussed it. Thanks.
We did, believe me, it was internally discussed quite on more than one occasion.
Any other questions? That was going to be my question, Chris. I was going to ask the exact same thing.
Let's be smart.
May I have a motion, please?
Motion to adopt.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Stephen,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jill.
Aye.
And about the dog, what does the dog vote? Oh, look at that. Joanna,
Aye.
Denise, aye. Thank you. Okay, Article 64. Oh, so your
Thank you.
dog is showing up just in time for animals, Jill. Excellent.
And we have perfect timing because the town manager just joined. So we timed it
Great.
perfectly.
She knew this. She knew
The
this.
sixth sense.
Libby's timing is always impeccable.
Thank you. Okay, so 64, is that where we're at?
That's where we are. Yep.
Okay, these are all going to be very easy to explain, I think. This one basically is a bylaw amendment to allow a dog park. And it came about because of the Land Bank Dog Park. And they had asked over the summer, do we need to do anything to modify the leash law? And we consulted with town council, and this is what was recommended.
Okay. Any questions? I mean, it's very straightforward. Dogs on a leash, behind the fence, out of the leash, out of the fence, back on the leash. It's basically what it says.
Motion to adopt.
Thank you. May I have a
Second.
second? Thank you. Stephen,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Denise, aye. Thank you. Okay.
All right.
65.
65, this is a kind of a housekeeping issue with the Agricultural Commission bylaw. It unfortunately in a couple of different warrant articles to amend membership, I think, there became a discrepancy as to what the membership is in different sections of the bylaw. So this is to fix it, to make sure that they are consistent.
And it's 5 members, I see, of the Agricultural Commission.
Yeah, there's no change to the number of members.
And this is the one that's currently has no one in it. Is that correct?
It either has no one or maybe
Just one person.
It's not fully functional.
Okay. Okay, any questions? A motion?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Second.
I know it's been a long week, folks. Stephen? Peter?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Joanna?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Denise, aye. Thank you. 66.
All right, 66 was a request from the Historical Commission to modify their membership. It's basically right what it says there. Change the number of members from 5 to 7 and eliminate the alternates.
All right.
As they expire.
Motion to adopt.
Thank you, Joe.
Second.
Thank you, Peter. Stephen?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Joanna?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Denise, aye. Thank you. Streets and sidewalks.
All right, this is incredibly simple. There's been some internal kind of complaining about the title of this article. So when people are trying to look it up in the town code, they can't immediately find what they're looking for. So there was a request to clarify what this is about. It's not just sidewalks, it's also streets, bicycle paths, and or ways. So that wording is just going to be added to the title.
You didn't have to put like multi-use path? You didn't
No,
have to add MUP to this?
we're going to pretend a bicycle path is the same thing as a multi-use path or a way.
Okay. All right, just checking. So, Any other questions besides my fascinating one about MUPs? No? Okay.
Oh,
May I have a motion, please?
so moved.
Second,
Stephen,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
George,
aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Denise, I would like to see MUPs. Cemetery regulation.
Okay, so the Cemetery Commission, some months ago, gave us some proposed amendments. We sent them to town council for review, and he said, oh, cemetery regulations are the only regulations in Mass General Law that actually require the approval of town meeting versus the select board or the Cemetery Commission. So we said, all right, well, let's send them to town meeting as amended. So there are, and we also don't think they ever were actually adopted in the first place by town meeting. So this is kind of correcting a couple of things. And so this is what their existing regulations, and it just incorporated their amendments, and the amendments were not, they were more sort of housekeeping types of things or clarifications. So this is their whole bunch of regulations.
I think the definitions are interesting. I would have not known what a cenotaph is.
There's a
What's the
lot
matter
of
with you?
interesting grave language in here.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, any questions? Being none, may I have a motion
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
and a second?
Second,
Thank
Second.
you. Okay, Joe,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
George,
aye.
Denise, I. Done. Okay. All right. I think we are going to skip committee reports as we just got the CRC is still working its way through its report, and we just got the capital program committee's report. Thank you, Rick, for sending us the updated copy. And then from there, our next meeting is next Tuesday. Monday's a public holiday for the town folks. So don't send them any emails on Monday, please. Especially Maria. Don't send her any. You can send as many as you want to Brian.
Don't send me any either.
Yeah, don't send any to Libby. So yeah, it's been a busy week, but the good news is we are almost 70% of the way there, folks. So it's we're getting there. We have 4 more meetings after this one, and we will be wrapping up. I think we're going to be using March 7th and 8th. I don't anticipate we're going to get to skip the extra day this year, just because we still have quite a few to go. So, but I think the ones that require a certain amount of discussion are behind us, and the rest should be pretty straightforward like these were tonight. So that's my expectation. Any
Right.
other business from anyone? Any comments?
None.
Okay, in which case I want to say thank you. It's been actually it feels like it's been a very long week, even though we're finishing at 5:30, but it just feels like a long week this week. So thank you very much, everyone, for getting through this and doing it in such a constructive way. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you all on Tuesday. And as usual, Maria, Brian, Rick, Libby, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Bye.
Bye.